In this video, you're gonna learn and practice the two most common tactical motifs in chess. I'm Grandmaster Igor Smirnov from the Remote Chess Academy, and let's go ahead and get started. Well, theoretically, there is a lengthy list of various tactical motifs which you can see right now named on the screen. In reality, in a real practical game, you will mostly use just two of them, and this is exactly what we're gonna study and practice today. We will start from simple positions and then we'll gradually increase the complexity, going to a more advanced level. So whether you are a beginner player or an advanced player, this training will be suitable for you. And there we go with the first tactical motif called a pin. In the current position, black has a decisive, a winning material advantage, a rook versus a bishop in this endgame. However, it is white to play, and white can take advantage of this tactical motif called a pin. And they can pin the black's rook to their queen, meaning the rook cannot make any moves in this position because that would expose a more valuable piece, the king, and according to the chess rules, that is impossible. Sometimes, if let's say instead of the king there would be the queen or other more valuable piece, well, there's no other valuable piece, so the queen, in that case, the rook could theoretically move, but that could lose some more valuable material, and that is why it is said that the rook is pinned. In the current example, these tactical motifs helps white winning material. For example, if black plays any move, white can grab the rook, and now the material's balance is equal, the position is equal, and it should be a draw. Here comes a slightly more complex example. It is white to play. In this position, still black has once again the winning material advantage. Normally, the rook against the knight in a position like that should be winning. However, it is white to play, and they can utilize the tactical motif which we are aware of. However, you can't execute it right away, and therefore you need to prepare it. Sometimes you need to attract your opponent's pieces to the unfavorable positions, which can be done in this case with a temporarily pawn sacrifice, pawn to e8, and after that you can take the material back by putting the bishop onto a4, pinning the rook, aiming to capture the rook on the next move. And if black tries to protect the rook, the good thing about the pin is that this piece cannot run away because it is pinned, and therefore you can bring more pieces and enforce that threat. In this case, an immediate exchange on b5 would be just an exchange, would lead to a draw, but white can bring one more piece to attack this pinned piece, and in this case, there is no way for black to escape on the next move. Regardless of what black does, white will grab the rook, for example, let's say king to e7, now white grabs the rook for nothing, and after the following exchange, white is a knight up, and white is winning. Now let's see how this tactical motif can be used in a real practical game. White starts with pawn to e4, pawn to e5, knight to 3, knight c6, bishop c4, pawn to d6, knight c3, fairly common opening moves, and here black can already establish that pin of the white's knight by playing bishop to g4, pinning the knight to the white's queen. However, in this case, there is something tricky that white can do. Let me also mention here that sometimes there is an absolute pin in case a piece is pinned to the king. Let's say if the white's king is here onto e2, of course that's not the move white should be playing, this is a bad mistake in this case, but if in a position like that, the knight cannot technically move at all, and therefore it is called an absolute pin. But if a knight is pinned to just a more valuable piece, such as a queen in this case, then it is called a relative pin, meaning the knight normally cannot move because that would lose the queen. But in some variations, white may still consider this option. And in this case, white can push the pawn firstly to h3, preparing a clever trap called a legal trap, and after that, there goes knight to e5. Sacrificing the queen, showing to black that that was a relative pin, and at times, white can ignore it. And after the queen is sacrificed, white finishes the game in a really beautiful way, following with knight to d5, checkmate. Here comes the final position for the first tactical motif called a pin. In this case, it is black to play. So far, we have analyzed the situations where a pin is created with a bishop, and it is the case in most of the situations. However, in reality, a piece can be pinned with any linear piece, such as a bishop, a rook, or a queen. And in this position, let's take a look at how can you utilize this tactical motif without using your bishop. By the way, if you are an advanced player, you may pause the video here for a few seconds and think about this position and how would you play here as black. The winning move for black here is rook to c3. In this case, you're utilizing the power of the pin along the second rank, and you take advantage of the fact that white cannot just capture this rook because they would lose the more valuable piece, the queen standing there onto e2. And let's take a move back. What else can white do? If not rook takes c3, they may try taking another rook on a2, and in this case after rook to c1 it is just an equal exchange of rooks, but on the next move black can finish the game with a beautiful checkmate, rook to h1. Before we move on to the second most common tactical motif in chess, let me invite you to join the free masterclass, The Best Way to Improve at Chess Instantly. You can click the link on the screen or down below the video in the description to join this free masterclass. Because knowing tactical motifs is certainly helpful, but it's not enough to provide you more significant improvement in chess. And in this masterclass, I put together my most powerful training ways that can help you to elevate your chess in no time. There we go with the second most common tactical motif in chess, called a fork or a double attack. In this case, it is delivered with the knight jumps to d5, attacking the two pieces at the same time, and therefore black cannot escape with both of them simultaneously, and inevitably on the next move white will grab one of the black's rooks, let's say in the line like rook to d7, white would grab one of the rooks, and now with got an equal position, white managed to win material using this tactical motif called a fork or a double attack. And now let's analyze more complex examples of utilizing this tactical motif. Most frequently, a double attack is delivered by a knight, which we have just analyzed in the previous example, but of course your any piece or even a pawn can deliver a double attack. For example, in the current position, if it were black to play, black would win the game easily because knight and bishop could win the game, but in the current position it was white to play. They played king to b1 with a double attack to the black's knight and the bishop, therefore winning one of these two pieces on the next move and achieving a draw. Now let's see how you can utilize this tactical motif in your real practical game. Let's take a look at one of the most popular chess opening that called the two knights defense. Right here on the fourth move you can already utilize the double attack. The knight from g5 aims to capture the pawn on f7, thus attacking simultaneously the black's queen and the rook, and therefore black should really be concerned about this threat, as if white executes it, he's definitely winning. The only normal way for black to cover this weakness is to push their pawn forward to d5, and now after pawn takes d5, the correct response for black is knight to a5, trying to deflect the white's pieces from those attacking positions. But if your opponent is unaware of this position, they're likely to capture the pawn back, which allows you to utilize the double attack once again. In this case, you first attract the black's king to this unfavorable position onto f7 by sacrificing your knight, and on the next move you're playing queen to f3, which is also a double attack, attacking the king as well as the knight with your queen. And here black is really having a really hard time deciding what to do. They should either retreat with their king back, allowing you to just grab this knight back, continuing your powerful attack, or if they try to desperately hold this knight right there onto d5 with the help of their king, then the king becomes really exposed, and you can now continue attacking that knight by playing knight to c3. By the way, notice that here white is also utilizing the tactical motif which we have discussed previously. The knight is pinned to the king, and therefore white can keep bringing more and more pieces to attack this knight. It is not a coincidence, by the way, that these two motifs, a fork and a pin, goes hand in hand, because just like I said at the beginning of this lesson, these two are just the most popular tactical motifs, and that's why it's so useful for you to know them and to be able to utilize them in your games. And now if black tries to keep the knight there and play something like knight to e7, you can just keep crushing black and play pawn to d4, exploding the position in the center, trying to really get to the black's king, and black is defenseless. Let's say they just capture your pawn, they can do something else, but they would be in a losing position anyway, and here you can just trade off the knights or go queen to e4 right away, and on the next move inevitably you would grab this knight regardless of what black does. For example, of course it's not the only possible continuation, but just to show you one possible line, you collect the knight back and then you finish the game off. Here's one more way for you to use double attack in your practical games. Once again, we begin with the very common moves, And at this point already, you can utilize the power of a double attack. In this position, you can use the very typical tactical idea by temporarily sacrificing your knight on e5, and on the next move, you continue with pawn to d4, which creates that double attack to the black's minor pieces, and therefore you will take your minor piece back while saving a more initiative position. For example, a lot of amateur players that don't know how to deal with these kind of positions just capture that pawn on d4, which is a mistake. In this case, you simply recapture with your queen, and you got a bishop versus a knight, which already gives you some advantage. You're also attacking the knight, as well as indirectly that pawn on g7, and black is already in trouble. Let's take one move back. Instead of taking the pawn on d4, it is better for black to save their bishop by playing bishop to d6. But nevertheless, you take the knight first. Currently the material balance is equal, but you have more initiative position. You can start chasing that bishop, and probably black will need to trade it off. And after that, you just have a little bit more space. For example, the game may continue with moves like that. Both sides simply continue their development. And now at this point, you just have more open lines. You have this open line for your rook. You have nice pawns in the center. They're ready to go forward onto e5 and start attacking black. You have two bishops. And even though, of course, it is a playable position for both sides, but anyway, white is a bit more active. And it all happened thanks to white utilizing the power of a double attack. Here's a little practice for you. In the English opening, which starts with the move pawn to c4, black may respond with their pawn to d5 to expand in the center, and after white captures the pawn, black often plays the move knight to f6. If black tries to recapture the pawn with their queen, it gives white this extra tempo for development of their knight. And therefore, instead of this, let me take a step back, instead of recapturing the pawn with a queen here, after white captures the pawn, black may wish to play knight f6 in order to grab this pawn with their knight on the next move. And at this point, let me ask you, what can you play as white in order to set a clever trap for black? Now you have a chance to apply practically what you learned in this video. Please think about it and write it in the comments down below. Also, if you want to bring your chess game to the next level, you may click the link on the screen or down below and watch the free masterclass where I'm showing you the most powerful way to progress in chess. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.